Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. My name is Aaron Zornes, Chief Research Officer for the MDM Institute. Today we are lucky to have a case study that will help us understand the business value of master data governance. And this is sponsored by Vinculum, who is a supplier of master data management solutions. If we could go to our next chart, please, for the agenda. Our agenda will be myself as an industry analyst pointing out some of the key trends related to master data governance for the next several years. Then after my short portion, we have the Johnson&Johnson Advanced Sterilization Products Division's success story, where Gil Gamez will give us his insights into how he solved his business challenges using master data management. And then lastly, our sponsors will give us a couple of minutes about their company and about their product line that supported the J&J success. And then at the end of our 1-hour webinar today, we'll have 5 or 10 minutes for questions and answers. You're welcome to plug in those questions into the question box that you should see on your screen. If we run out of time and are unable to address your question, we will call you back and make sure that you get your answer that way. Again, if we can now go to the next chart, please. So on our next chart, mine hasn't refreshed yet. Okay, on the next chart, we have some background on the MDM Institute. So the MDM Institute was founded over 10 years ago to focus on customer data integration, CDI, product information management, PIM or PIM, and reference data management, along with data governance. We primarily work with global 5,000 size companies, companies with $1 billion or more in revenue, and we provide free services to those companies, a limited number of companies, to provide evaluation assistance in their selection of master data management products and related software. We provide pricing advice as well as reference checking, and we also provide some modest reviews of requests for proposals, etc., as they come and flow during their acquisition cycles. We're most known to the world for our series of conferences around the world, the Master Data Management and Data Governance Summit, which is in its 11th year. As you can see on this chart, it takes place in New York, San Francisco, London, Singapore, Sydney, Toronto, Tokyo, etc., and we'll be adding Shanghai, actually in 2017 at this point, not 2016. And our next one up is November 8th, 9th, 10th in New York City, the biggest one in the world. And a little bit about myself. So I was happy to be tapped to do the honors of moderator today. And without further ado, let's go to the next chart, into the market itself. And when we talk about the master data management market on this chart, we're talking about the software, specifically for MDM hubs, not the data quality name and address algorithms, not the various pieces and parts that might be added as ancillary products to an MDM hub, but the actual MDM software itself. And our friends at Gartner Research, we peg them as well, and we both track the market sizing over several years. And this was a rather torrid market at one point, T-O-R-R-I-D, torrid. In the sense it was experiencing 18% or so growth. We've now slowed down to about 11% compound annual growth rate, which is still very, very healthy given the size of the market. If you look at master data for customer, $1 billion software market just for the hubs. Likewise, product master, supplier master, again, $1 billion US. So it's a $2 billion software market. And if you add in the services, which we don't here, but the services are 3 to 4 times that for the mega vendors products, that is IBM, Informatica, Oracle, SAP, you typically spend, as validated by many years of experience by all of us, you typically spend 3 to 4 times in services what you spend on software for a mega vendor's product. So the services side, again, is another $6 billion plus, $6 billion US plus in services. Now, it's also very important to note that of that market, more than 50% of the market, the installations, the revenues, etc., are led by offerings from not the mega vendors. That is not IBM, not Informatica, not Oracle, not SAP. So there is a very healthy second tier, third tier, best of breed, however you want to characterize it, of master data management solutions that address very important requirements and also have perhaps more flexible pricing, substantially different footprint, and resource requirements for standing it up. So that's why there's a very healthy if you like, second-tier market. And on the next chart, we're going to get some more insights into the trends. So if we look at the market itself, yes, there has been market consolidation, not just Oracle buying everybody that they can get their hands on, but likewise IBM, Informatica, SAP. When we look at the mega vendors, those four in particular, have been buying a lot. They've been buying PIM hubs, product information management hubs. They've been buying customer data management hubs. They've been buying algorithms for entity resolution, name and address tools. They've been acquiring business process management, BPM, like Lombardi and other. And so, yes, there's quite a bit of mergers and acquisitions that take place within the MDM market. And so that's one area where we have to point out that the mega vendors typically don't innovate. They acquire, and then they take on the task of integrating all these various piece parts, which is very different from the second and third tier vendors who typically have all the piece parts built from the get-go. And so that's why you see perhaps some different synergies between the mega vendors and the second tier of MDM solution providers. We also have to remind ourselves that when we talk about master data management, data these days includes big data, enterprise content management, et cetera, Internet of Things, and so on, social network data, all that unstructured data that flows into organizations, into their data lakes, their so-called data streams, et cetera, et cetera. So master data management is increasingly being called upon to address big data. And it does, because the entity resolution, the identity resolution that's found in the master data management tools are an excellent tool to provide value in the big data analytics portion of the big data problem set. We're also going to point out on this chart that there's something that we might call a duology that is serving two gods. When you look at the very large companies, clearly there's typically, politically speaking and strategically speaking, a center of gravity for a particular vendor or two. And in particular, IBM, Oracle, SAP, and in some more cases, Informatica on the uptake. But you find that these vendors are the centers of gravity, and they will dominate perhaps customer product supplier as mission-critical domains. But they're also much more expensive and much more complex, and you may not want to use them for some of the other domains, such as reference data, location, menu, human resources, et cetera, pricing. And so you'll find that many times there is a second vendor of choice, such as Microsoft or others, that is that second center of gravity for master data management. And on the next chart, we're going to look at more of the market trends. So in the market itself, we can say that functionality has been, if you like, the functionality has increasingly been commoditized. And it's commoditized in the sense that the functionality of add customer, delete customer, promote customer, all of this information capabilities are being put out by almost all the vendors, of course, in the MDM landscape. So when we talk about the being commoditized, they have to do things differently to differentiate from each other. And so historically, they had been specializing in certain industries. If you remember Cyperion, they were focused on pharmaceutical, IBM, financial services and telco, Stebo, and Riversand on retail and on oil and gas, for example. So historically, there have been specializations, but we're finding even more of that now that the mega vendors in particular that we list out here are looking to provide, if you like, applications. Customer 360 from Informatica, Provider and Patient and Clinical Hub from IBM, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, et cetera, from Oracle with their Cloud Customer MDM, SAP with their MDG for Enterprise Asset Management, MDG for Retail and Fashion, et cetera. So clearly, the mega vendors are fighting it out at a different level than the best-of-breed or second-tier vendors. And that points us out to, or brings us up to the essence of what is the differentiation among the vendors. If you look at the second-tier vendors, they're tending to do more data governance than just than a data steward console, than just an admin tool for browsing the system and fixing the system. You'll find that the data governance is much more active, it's much more integrated, and that there's workflow built in as well, not just for the governance side, but for the execution of collisions and customer onboarding and executing the survivorship rules, et cetera, et cetera. One of the key differentiators taking place in the market overall is the addition of something called graph database. And so we're starting to see graph database come in as a major differentiator to unify the disparate domains that the mega vendors have. The mega vendors have bought a product hub, they've bought a supplier hub, they've bought a customer hub, and now they're unifying those for analytic purpose and for domain walking, that's a crosswalking, et cetera, via graph database. And so that's a very major trend that we're seeing in the marketplace as well. Now, on our next chart, we're going to look at the overall trends in the marketplace. And as an industry analyst firm, I was one of the founders of a company called Meta Group 25 years ago, where for 15 years I ran the research practice called Application Delivery Strategies, which was the biggest part of Meta Group. And as a research analyst team, my people and myself had to chunk out our various areas of technology or IT research into some manageable chunks, and then research and predict and make recommendations and give advice on those particular chunks. So at the MDM Institute, here are 10 of the, 12 of the strategic planning assumptions that we've been looking at over the last several years that we continue to project forward. So today we're going to talk briefly about data governance trends, about business process hubs, and we're also going to talk about cloud MDM. So on the next chart, we're going to start with data governance. And in particular, we're going to call it master data governance because there's other data governance out there that has to do with hard assets such as PCs and mobile devices and so on. So just sometimes you'll see in the industry that we use the word master data governance more than data governance. So clearly, this isn't a challenge for most organizations to stand up some sort of data governance processes and do more than just document the sad state of affairs in data administration, et cetera, in companies. So the challenge has been to take these tools that do a good job of documenting what's going on in your organization and capturing the rules for survivorship, collisions, et cetera, and just in general your ETL and data quality rules. The challenge has been to integrate that with master data management hubs and processes. And that's something that has eluded the mega vendors for a while in particular. And mostly what we've been seeing is some lightweight business glossaries that have data steward workflows, et cetera, sort of lightweight data governance tools that are appropriate for BI type people, not necessarily the people who are building operational mothership type large scale systems. And so that's been a challenge, the lack of data governance for and integration with the MDM hubs from the mega vendors. Now, we're also seeing in the marketplace that this is changing. The mega vendors get it. They're trying to move out of this mode where they market as if they have integrated proactive data governance, but they don't really have it. So currently we're calling that passive aggressive. They say one thing, but they do something else. They say they have active integrated, but in reality they have not that. So that's passive aggressive, and moving more into an active integrated data governance mode. You'll see that some of the vendors are also taking up some of the Gartner terminology, such as bimodal, this and that. And just to make fun of that, we call it bipolar, because we don't find data governance tools that really service both the business user as well as the IT requirement for data governance. So on the next chart, we're going to further discuss what's happening with the data governance in the market. So as I said in the last chart, mostly what we're seeing in the marketplace are these data steward consoles. Okay, they really don't address the needs of the front or middle back office people and the IT professionals. In particular, they're lacking business process management workflow integration into the rest of the flows of the company, and it, definitely with the hub, as we'll see, the MDM hub. They lack policy management. They may do a good job of identifying certain aspects of policies, but they don't really do management of policies, in particular for ETL and data quality, which is required for your BI data warehouse at MDM. And then they really don't have a lot of integration with MDM hubs. There's a lot of talk, but not a lot of action. So on the next chart, we're going to now talk a little bit about business process management. So this is the second of 3 strategic planning assumptions, or if you like, big trends in the MDM marketplace. So clearly there is a large group of MDM vendors and a smaller group of BPM vendors, business process management software vendors. And these two have been duking it out in the marketplace for a while. The MDM vendors realize they have to do workflow, they have to have it, so they acquired it or built it out. The mega vendors have either acquired or built out BPM, whereas the second-tier vendors, second-tier solution providers for MDM, have it more or less built in and also integrate with the industry-dominant BPM tools that are out there. The BPM vendors, however, likewise took that up in the sense of ongoing competition with each other, the BPM vendors such as Software AG and TIBCO understood that they needed master data management. So they went out and acquired MDM as a captive technology and made it subservient to their BPM architectures. And so that's what we've seen in the marketplace. Again, that's just the nature of the evolution of IT markets. And again, we're starting to see graph database as the technology that's going to do the domain crosswalks, and likewise the integration of rules and processing and analytics across these various systems. So again, you heard the word graph database coming out, and that's why you see at our conferences, the MDM and Data Governance Summit conferences, several presentations on how you use graph database on your own to unify all this, or how you use it with a mega vendor solution to rationalize their portfolio. So what we're seeing is that BPM is important. That's our message. Whether you come at it from the MDM perspective or you're a BPM solution-centric company using a BPM tool, and you need to have master data as part of that as well. So next chart, we're going to talk about cloud. So cloud MDM is, like anything cloud, very important in the sense of we have compelling economics that say we have to do some level of cloud, because it's the whole concept of infinite elasticity in terms of the ability to host and test various solutions before you buy, without setting up all the different servers and doing software configurations, just to test drive the various types of software. It's very attractive to be able to test drive a cloud version of something or 2 or 3 products before you settle on one. And also the pricing models are also compelling, operating expense versus capital expense. There's been a lot of rationales as to why we need to do cloud, and of course having data in the cloud also causes us some indigestion or problems with integrating that back with the on-premise side of the company. So people going willy-nilly into Salesforce or Workday, et cetera, are finding that it's a challenge to integrate these various sources of enterprise data back with each other that were heretofore integrated, and now they're being dispersed. And even in some countries, such as the European Union, it's legally impossible to host employee and customer data outside your country. So you'll find some interesting variations on how cloud architectures get enabled. But in any case, certain things such as name and address matching, these are certain things that can take place in the cloud using the relatively infinite compute power we have there, as well as certain types of data lend themselves to cloud management or dispersal, such as reference data. When you're keeping track of your standard list of codes and your ISO, your NAICS, or your industry-specific standard code classifications for color or sizing, et cetera, all this is stuff that could be shared in the cloud very easily, and that's why you see a lot of reference data management applications as a subset of one of the domains for master data management being in the cloud. So the next chart, we just want to remind you that we have a series of conferences around the world. And so this is the world's largest series of master data management and data governance events. In particular, we've been doing this for 11 years now, and New York City takes place on an interesting date, November 8th, the start of the Civil War in the U.S., however you want to characterize it, Election Eve. So on November 8th, we have a series of workshops at the Hilton, New York, and then 500 or so people descends upon the building. And for Wednesday and Thursday of that week, in about 5 weeks, we'll be doing our main conference. Again, about 30 sessions, 50 speakers, and about 40 vendors running an expo concurrent with the conference where you can actually talk to the solution providers. And then here are some other ones. If you're a global company or you happen to reside outside of North America, there are other options to capture this information as well. So at this point, I've given you, as an industry analyst, my name is Aaron Zornes, the moderator today, and I've given you an overview of the key trends relative to the solution that we're going to be talking about in the next 10 or 15 minutes. And so I'd like to bring up the next chart and formally introduce our speaker. Okay, so Gil Gamez is with Advanced Sterilization Products in the Orange County, Southern California area. I'm in Northern California, and he's my neighbor in Southern California. And Gil has at least 15 years or so with J&J, and he also has a good 15 years before that at a mega vendor. And so he's got quite a bit of experience when it comes to supply chain. And Gil is now going to take us through how they approached the problem of supply chain and solved it with master data governance and a master data management hub. Gil, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. As Aaron said, my name is Gil Gamez. I'm with Advanced Sterilization Products. Advanced Sterilization Products is one of the many med device companies under the big Johnson&Johnson umbrella. I'm currently the Master Data and Business Systems Manager at ASP, and I've currently been in this role for 3.5 years. A little bit of background before I go to the next slide. So ASP Johnson&Johnson deployed SAP platform in 2014. What we quickly understood within an SAP platform, it's very focused on master data accuracy. From a previous state that on our legacy system, we had a very small responsibility for master data. Once we went into SAP, we shifted to about 200 data attributes that were required to essentially activate, or what we call born apart within SAP. So it was a very significant shift from a master data collection and management perspective from our legacy system into SAP. Next slide, please. So some of the key challenges that we had with this shift is we were using a manual-based operation. So I like to call it Excel on steroids. So we essentially built an Excel spreadsheet with about 200 to 250 data attributes that were required within SAP. And we broke these data attributes into buckets within this Excel spreadsheet of responsibility of master data across all of our business units. So we had requirements from quality, from our finance team, from our procurement team, from our production team, from manufacturing, from our external ops team. So a lot of different people that required now to provide us master data and accurate master data to be able to build within our SAP platform. So it was very manual-based, Excel-based, required a full-time resource to really quarterback this effort through the entire process. So as you can appreciate, it was a huge manual effort, and time spent consolidating the data into one tool, if you will, that we would then take that tool and upload manually all of that information directly into SAP because we did not have an integration. Additionally, we had very little, or if all, any visibility to our internal and external parties across the globe. So if you can appreciate, we distribute our products to internal affiliates around the world. So master data releases is critical to ensure that we can continue to service our customers around the world. We were delayed in providing real-time information. So as we were releasing new codes within our platform, the information was very delayed to get that information to our affiliates around the world, and presented service challenges to our being able to service our customers around the world. And we lacked an adequate tracking system, so we had no idea how long it was taking us to collect master data, who was holding up the process. Again, it was a resource going in and monitoring the process. At times we were finding that somebody was holding up the process was not available. So very manual process. And we were doing this off of a common SharePoint. So there was a risk that if SharePoint went down or somebody told us we had to take down all of our information off of SharePoint, it was additional added risk. So we stepped back and looked and said, you know, this isn't sustainable over long term, very manual. We compromise integrity of master data and the quality of master data and rely on a lot of people from a manual perspective to give us information. So it wasn't sustainable over long term, knowing that, you know, we were only going to continue to grow as a business, that it just wasn't the right model that we could live with for even short term and long term. So we really needed a way to find a partner, look for a solution with a partner that provided us all of the capabilities that we needed. So we essentially went out with a laundry list of requirements to different vendors, and within that requirement was a way to manage master data governance, build a master data hub. So as we continued to deploy major supply chain systems throughout the globe, we had a single depository for worldwide product master. And so that was additional requirement. And then the last requirement was to really take this, what I call Excel spreadsheet on steroids, and break that spreadsheet down within each function and drive that management and that requirement into a workflow tool. And this is where we seeked out Vinculum's background and really came to the table with Vinculum with our needs. And what we experienced was very easy partner to work with. It wasn't a case that they came to the table and it was, here's our solution, and it's you either go with our solution or not. It was more of a partnership of us laying out our foundation of what we needed and them being able to go back and help us develop and ultimately get the resolution that we're looking for. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot, what I like to say of just quick screenshot of our before process and after. So you can see on the top, SharePoint workflow, very complex, very time consuming, and this was prior to us going within the Vin MDM workflow solution. And the bottom pictorial is what our process looks like today. So very much more streamlined, very much more driving accountability and ownership across the organization. And one of the other additional benefits that we got is in a SharePoint, we were not able to get electronic signatures from the business. And with the workflow, we integrated electronic signature in each stage of the workflow. So quality assurance, finance, manufacturing, and master data all have now a requirement to sign off and validating their master data at the best of their ability within the organization. Next slide, please. So ultimately, the solution that we went with is, like I said, with Vinculum. We went on a cloud-based platform, and this was primarily easier for use, had a lot of flexibility in the cloud, and ultimately, primarily as well, is Johnson&Johnson was moving towards more virtual servers, so the cloud was the right fit for us, and it really is a centralized depository now for master data. We had flexibility in data governance and framework within the way we're collecting master data, as you've seen in the last picture. So we were now also driving data governance within the application. So looking at how the rest of our affiliates around the world are creating master data and having some say-so or some voice on driving accuracy around the globe on how we were setting up product master. Still some work to do in that area, but we have a good baseline now to help bring that closer within ASP. Really, Vinculum, like I said, the workflow management. So the workflow really orchestrating the requirements for master data. And really the key for us within the workflow tool is you take a business unit such as quality. There was quite a bit of master data attributes that the quality organization needs to provide, such as, is the product a required inspection product? What is the inspection criteria for that part, etc. A lot of that information is required and relevant to the next group in the workflow tool. So there's a sequence within the workflow where you can't jump the workflow, and it's designed that way for a purpose. So we have the disciplines built in through the workflow tool on where data needs to be collected in order for somebody to benefit for the data. As an example, our finance team is the last team to sign off on the master data because they require their financials to be set up based on all of the master data. So everybody within the business units have to provide all of their master data for finance to review the workflow, verify all the information, and then finance does their financials around that. Finance couldn't be the first team in the workflow or the first business unit in the workflow because all the other master data that's required. So very controlled, very disciplined workflow throughout the process. Configurable role-based. So we were able to put in there, it's not just one person in quality that has to approve the data. It may have to be multiple people. You're going to obviously have cases where people are on vacation or on holiday or out sick. And if I start a process today and that goes to an individual, Greg, that has to sign off, and Greg is suddenly out ill, and we have an urgent situation where we have to set up master data, we can now go into the workflow tool and reassign the person that needs to provide the information. So we have a primary, secondary, and tertiary build out within the workflow tool where we can assign the workflow to respected individuals. And again, automation, completion of the data collection across all the stakeholders. And lastly, the big win for us within the application is building the electronic signature. This was key for us, and this is just a final validation point of ensuring the data is accurate, the integrity of the data is there, and the quality of data is there. Those are the things that keep us in business to be able to sell to our customers, is the integrity and quality of data, and also eliminates any potential recalls, etc., based on the way master data is set up. Master data is the driver for everything you do within your supply chain ERP system. So if you don't get the master data correct, you impact the business to be able to service our customers around the world. Some of the benefits that we have seen already within the platform, the big one for me as a manager is I strategically plan throughout the year, really taking this resource that was managing and quarterbacking this manual process and reallocating his time now to other key aspects of the business, because now we've taken him out of that role and really driving the roles and responsibilities, the management, the escalations within the workflow tool. The other thing the workflow tool provides, which I have a responsibility for and I like, is I can go in and pull metrics off the workflow tool. I can see who's holding up a workflow, what's our SLA. So if our SLA is 5 days, and I have 5 days from start to finish to complete the workflow, where am I at risk to not meeting that SLA? So is there somebody within the workflow that's holding up? I can run immediate metrics to find out at every point in time where that workflow is, who's holding up, is it partially completed, is there a rejection that needs to be done, and also publishing out weekly metrics to senior leadership to say, this is how long it's taking us to release a part, because we have areas of the master data workflow tool where business units are holding up the process. So again, it goes back to driving accountability back to the business units to be able to provide us accurate and timely data for us to move our process forward. So a big benefit there was reallocating a resource to provide opportunity in other areas of the master data business. Reduction in cycle time. So again, it was taking us a long time through, as you can probably appreciate, quarterbacking this effort using an Excel spreadsheet. So we've reduced some of our cycle time on using the workflow tool. We now have a way to historically build out master data. So when we have a change, what happens is the workflow goes out and looks at the master data hub and says, when was the last time you made a change for this part? It's going to help the cycle time because it's going to bring in that historical information into the process that I've initiated. It's going to help me fill out a lot of the repeated information, and then I'm only focused on the master data fields that are changing, such as maybe it's a case of the code rev or IRN has changed. So a lot of my information is going to be the same other than my product code. So again, that's reducing the cycle time for the process because now I have a historical database to go in and look at what the last change was and pre-populate that information into my process that I'm starting. Consistent material information across all business units and real-time monitoring notification alerts, as I talked about. We've had great feedback from 2 of our affiliates around the world that we've piloted with, specifically EMEA and Asia-Pac regions. We've had already positive feedback provided that they are able to service their customers a lot quicker now with us providing them real-time information, to the point that they've made some adjustments that they've been able to fill orders quicker than they were previously just by us providing them the information. So now everything is real-time. At the same time I'm setting up my master data, they're getting notification to start their process within their own ERP system, because we don't all operate within the same ERP system around the world. So they're getting the same information that we're getting at the same time, so they can go proactively and begin setting up the master data in their ERP system. So overall, at this point, you know, our experience with the application and with Vin company itself has been extremely positive. We're looking at additionally what we're calling phase 2 and phase 3 within the next 6 to 12 months on building additional capabilities within the platform, being able to now extend to other parts of the regions that are looking for help. So we've now set a baseline for master data. We now have a sustainable tool that now we can build out additional capabilities within the master data team to other areas of the business. So overall, very good success story that ASP's partnered with Vinculum and MDM.
Gil, thanks so much. That was great to hear. Again, it's always great to hear real life success, and in particular using business process management and an MDM hub to drive data governance, you know, and your quality processes and your onboarding of new products and so on. This is great stuff. Thank you so much. So you're going to be around for the Q&A later in about 15, 20 minutes. And now we're going to transition to the sponsor of this webinar, a company named Vinculum. And we're going to have the founders, Deepak and Annajee, as well as the VP of Operations for North America, share some insights about their company.
Hi there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And thanks, Aaron, for insightful coverage on the master data governance across industries and all the various tools and technologies available to resolve the issue. Thanks, Gil, for being in the show today and sharing how G from Vinculum helped Johnson&Johnson in achieving global operational governance that spans across the length and breadth of your organization. We thank you again for choosing Vinculum and Vin MDM for Johnson&Johnson and for your feedback that Vin MDM helps in achieving the desired results for your organization. I'm Deepak Singla, one of the co-founders of the Vinculum Group, a company incorporated in the US, having operations across North America with 2 major centers out of Florida and Arizona. I spent personally over 2 decades working with CPG, supply chain, and multi-channel retail companies before taking on the Vin MDM initiative at the Vinculum. I've had the opportunity to see a bit of an evolution of the MDM before MDM became what it is today. So why do you need a master data governance at all? Well, back then, data ownership used to have very little conflict, as most of the responsibilities were defined in the enterprise applications itself. Well, at the most, I mean, a data warehouse or something like that, a data mart used to be created as far as master data was concerned. With time, all business applications, the ERPs and all the core applications that you use for business transactions have become more and more specialized into doing their own core functions and stuff. And then as a result, the data governance took a back seat. Yeah, because none of the business applications focused on governing the overall master data at the enterprise level particularly, or manage its quality or conflicts in a single or a centralized ownership model. Then as time went on with the advent of the architecture, on-demand solutions and so on, each application started creating and maintaining their own subset of information, right? Then whether it's the customer information, supplier or products, which is the most critical or the core master data in any business. So it is then that the industry felt the need to have a data governance in place, and suddenly all these different methodologies and stuff started coming up. The industry started feeling a need to get a operational governance at an enterprise level as well as at a project level. So now, in order to bring back the synergy, expertise, the visibility, the guidelines, rules, and most importantly, the ownership, both in the centralized and decentralized environments, we picked up the lead and started working on a couple of data management projects with big enterprises. And all that experience got collated in creating the most disruptive tool for the MDG called Vin MDM. Can you change the slide, please? Well, Vin MDM, the tool is, and typically every MDM tool as such is supposed to augment functions like BI, analytics, CRMs, and the product catalog management, etc., by creating a central repository of master data servicing all the downstream systems. So what you see on this slide here is there's a different sources of information coming into into the enterprise, and then you need a MDG or a MDM tool to massage the data, cleanse it, and govern it. Most importantly, before you start publishing it onto different platforms, be it your marketing channels or different catalogs or wherever you want to publish it, and obviously to the downstream system. So idea is to keep a good quality information consistent and maintain as a central repository and supply this information onto your downstream systems. So next slide. Vin MDM, a tool which is very intelligent and innovative to implement your MDM strategies. It brings about the ownership to the master data it manages, governs and orchestrates the process of creating the master data. It has an intelligent rule engine to bring about the data quality. The rule engine also keeps a repository of all the rules that it acquires from each implementation. So all the modules that are listed on the slide, the data quality engine, the business rule engine, the reference data management, data governance, collaborative workflows, and stewardship. All of these modules, they work together to provide the quality that you need for your master data, which is the most critical business information that you have at the enterprise level. It's also a multi-domain MDM, gives you an integrated view across your products, suppliers, or customers. There's a lot of optional features also built into the tool, which are industry specific, like for the CPGs or the retail industry. Modules like the multi-hierarchy manager or the catalog manager, more relevant for the CPG and retail. Next slide. The solution can also be deployed on-premise or on cloud. So primarily, as the trend goes, it's more on cloud these days. So we have different options to buy an enterprise license or a monthly subscription model. A typical implementation of Vin MDM kicks off with creating an overall MDM strategy at a group level, covering all divisions, geographies, and functions in the organization across all the people, processes, and systems. So this exercise produces an enterprise level data architecture, process model, and some of the rules that needs to be implemented. And from this point on, Vin MDM takes over the intelligent business rule engine, or the industry-specific templatized approach that we've got makes our implementations easier and faster. Some of the value props that we provide is very fast implementation and all the business process orchestration specific to the industry that you're in, and a robust deduplication and survivorship engine, a data modeler, and a UI generator basically makes it very fast to create some of the temporary screens, etc. Also for the enrichment process that is part of the overall data governance as well. And then some of the industry-specific tools like multi-channel hierarchy and all of those things, they come in very handy for a very fast implementation as well. Well, we would like to thank our customers for the experience and all the opportunity they gave us in creating this disruptive tool. Well, thanks for the time. And can you one more slide? A bit about Vinculum. We're backed by Excel Partners and Ivy Cap. Excel Partners is one of the renowned VCs in the industry. They've been behind Facebook, Teradata, Walmart.com, and so many other early stage companies for a very long time. They chose us back in 2010 for the Series A round. We're a global company, primarily enabling the e-commerce ecosystem and work with CPGs and retailers primarily. Based in Arizona and Florida, out in the North America. Thanks for your time. I'll pass it back to Aaron to take this further.
Thank you, Annajee. So today, we're fortunate to wrap up on time. Our speakers were very good with time management, which is always a great thing to have happen. And we have about 10 minutes here for some Q&A, and we've been monitoring the questions as they come in and identifying which ones might make sense to the broader audience versus which ones might be better off served by a direct phone call back to you or email back to you. And so, Deepak, we have one here that's relative to Vinculum. And the question, if I paraphrase it, is actually anybody at Vinculum could answer this one. How much consulting is required to stand up the Vinculum Cloud MDM compared to the big efforts that we have, 1 or 2 years with IBM Informatica, Oracle, et cetera? How much services do we expect to have to put in place to stand this thing up?
Yeah, I mean, see, the couple of variables, though, size of the organization, volume of data, number of downstream systems, the cleansing that's required on the existing stuff. So, but then, just to put things in perspective, Johnson&Johnson ASP happened in 4 months flat. So that should be a good indication. But then I wouldn't envisage more than 6 months of a time frame for the most complex environment that we've seen so far. With all the different variables, etc., including a high-level MDM strategy, it should be like 6 months or so.
So does your organization help set up that roadmap or strategy? Is that part of the services you provide?
Yeah, so we do start the implementation project with a bit of a high-level strategy, which we cover basically around the people, process, technology, different geographies, divisions, etc. So unless that is in place, there's no point in going about a MDM tool implementation. So that's pretty much the starting point.
Okay, thank you, Deepak. Here's one for all the SAP people in the audience. The question more or less says how does VinCloud MDM integrate with, or does it even need to, the SAP footprint at J&J? And so, Gil, I don't know if you can share some insights into how the VinCloud MDM solution interoperates with your SAP fabric.
Yeah, so I'll talk through the phase one, which was our initial implementation. Initially, we talked about integration, but based on urgency to really get this implemented, we took the phase one integration off the table. So ASP did not integrate in this phase, but we are looking at potentially down the road a bit, probably closer to looking at implementation number 3. We were looking at potentially integrating what we're essentially doing today and integrating it directly to SAP. So again, we take additional manual operations off the table and rely on the workflow integrating directly into SAP. So for ASP, we did not have an integration for this phase, but looking at potentially down the road to integrate what we're currently doing into our SAP platform.
Okay. Thanks, Gil. Here's a question that looks like I could take on. It's all about reference data, and the question is, how important is reference data as a part of an overall MDM solution or strategy. So again, how important is reference data as part of an overall MDM solution? Well, it's vitally important. Reference data is something that is just mandatory in companies. Your company cannot function without being able to cross-communicate within your own systems, let alone with the outside world. And so you need industry standards and your own corporate standards for department codes, for product codes, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, it's very vital. Should it be part of your MDM solution? Most people would say yes, and I would agree, because again, it's master data. It needs governance. It needs sharing. There are rules for onboarding the data and for how and where it goes. Could it be a standalone RDM solution relative to your prevalent or dominant MDM solution? Sure. But for most people, it would be nice to have it as just another domain within your MDM platform. So I know when I looked at the Vin MDM solution set, part of the functionality was reference data. So that was a good validation that, again, a lot of the tier 2 vendors provide support for reference data as a domain, whereas the mega vendors want to charge you separately for that to the tune of $1 million or more just to do reference data. So again, that's rationale again to use a non-mega vendor product for some of these other domains, including reference data. So that's my sort of rant about reference data. And here's one. Pricing models. Again, mega vendors have somewhat obtuse and high-end pricing models. So the question is, does Vinculum have a more flexible pricing model than the mega vendors? What is the pricing model? Deepak, can you give some idea of cloud pricing versus on-premise, et cetera?
Sure. See, we have a number of engagement models and pricing models. So around the licenses, there's user-based. There's also a on-premise enterprise license, or on the cloud, there's a monthly subscription model, and so on. So we're very flexible on that. And then there is obviously a implementation and consulting piece, which is quite a variable in the sense we got to find out what's the volume and stuff like that. But like I said, 4 to 6 months is what it looks like. But on the licensing, it's very, very flexible, user-based, by the month, or enterprise, or a overall enterprise license model and stuff like that.
Okay. Here's another one for Vinculum people on the call today. The question is about performance and scalability. And specifically, the question asks, is VinCloud MDM appropriate for near real-time e-commerce style customer onboarding or transaction authorization? Or is it more of a batch-style workflow-centric MDM for data quality? And then if it does do the near real-time scalability, what are some of the parameters? I mean, how many concurrent users versus how many unique rows of master data, and so on. So what's your position about, where do you position yourself in terms of scalability and sizing of the problems that you can tackle?
See, the question whether it's batch or real time, I would say we use both the methods, and for different transactions we choose what's best in the situation we've got. So for example, I think part of the question is whether if we have about 50 concurrent users hitting 1 million rows or something. So I mean, that's again a variable. You got to decide in the situation how many concurrent users it could be at the max. And we use JSON objects and web services kind of technology for real time. And then it is batch mode as well, which is configurable. You could do it every minute, every 15 minutes, and all that. So that piece is like near real time, and the JSON object piece is real time. So and we got to choose like in a situation where you're onboarding a customer, you obviously need a real time feedback on the authorization, etc. Right? So those pieces have to be put on the JSON objects and stuff, which are real time. And then the ETL and all the other publishing piece, which is publishing the information to the downstream systems and stuff. That part is batch mode, and you could do it 5 minutes, 10 minutes kind of frequency. All of these transactions can sit in a log, kind of a queue, and which can be cleared up at a configurable frequency that you can have. So short answer, I mean, it's both, depends on the transaction and depends on number of concurrent users. So for example, the web services sometimes is not a great technology for a lot of concurrent users. But then we're talking about MDG here, right? So there won't be 50 users hitting 1 million records, etc., all at the same time. So for most implementations that we've seen so far, it has really worked with the JSON objects and web services for the real-time requirements and the transactions, and the batch mode, etc., configurable to minutes and seconds, etc., for the downstream systems integration. So pretty much.
Okay, and then Deepak, some of the proof points would be that you've got some very large online retailers in Asia, et cetera, that have stood this up for the front office, the e-commerce side as well as the back office, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've dealt with millions of records and all sorts of supplier aggregators or B2B marketplaces, B2C marketplaces, and all of those guys. So I mean, there's high traffic there, cataloging, etc. Obviously, also got a high traffic. So depending on the transaction, we choose the method to be used, but the tool has both the methods, batch mode as well as real time.
Okay. Is there some specific functionality? I know I saw a question somewhere in the list here, but I can't find it now. But is there some specific functionality that helps you better address consumer packaged goods and retail? Is there specific functionality that you have? Because you seem to have a lot of customers in CPG and retail.
Absolutely. So those are the two big industries that we specialize in. There is a templatized approach that we follow for these individual industries. For the CPGs and retail, cataloging is a major area, the part master, material master, product master, so PIM in particular. For the retail, so there is hierarchy manager and there's catalog managers, multiple catalogs for multi-channel retail environment. So that's one of the, I would say, industry-specific functionality that we've got. Then all the rules that we've got in the rule engine, they get more and more intelligent with every implementation that we do. So by and large, all the CPGs and including the J&J and all the retailers and multi-channel retailers that we've done. So we've accumulated more than 1,000 rules in the rule engine, which come in very handy for the implementations that we do. More or less, the rules stay the same, and they need to be tweaked a little bit for each implementation. But then, as such, all our customers see a lot of value coming in from the pre-built rules and adapters that we've got. Adapters, as in integrations with the standard ERPs like SAPs and Oracles of the world. So they come in really handy when it comes to mapping the data elements with the ERPs and all the different downstream systems, and all the specialization that comes from experience of working with the industry leaders. They obviously they help in a faster implementation and basically giving the best practice model, etc., to the customers.
Okay, good. Okay, so thank you, Deepak. We're at the top of the hour. We did our job on time, which is a good thing always. So I'd like to thank our speakers, Gil in particular, taking time out of his busy day at J&J's Advanced Sterilization Products division, and likewise Deepak for sponsoring this webinar, and his team. And again, this is Aaron Zornes, the Chief Research Officer for the MDM Institute. If you'd like more information about this solution set, this problem set, etc., there's my website, the mdminstitute.com, And there's an email address also here where you can look at sending in an email with specific information requests. There were a number of questions that were very specific to an organization, and so we're going to look at how best to answer those by email or by phone calls back to you all. And again, thank you for your time today. This was a webinar specifically to discuss how the intersection of BPM, cloud, MDM, and data governance can come together to solve fundamental business problems. And I think we did a good job today of showcasing how you can do that with all those technologies. And again, thanks to J&J for contributing the speaker. Thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you at another one of these webinars soon.